Okay, this screencast is about adding and subtracting fractions. The biggest thing you have to remember about adding and subtracting fractions is that you need a common denominator. So let's look at a couple of examples. If we wanted to add 3 over 12 plus 4 over 12, we have a common denominator of 12, so we bring the denominator along and we simply perform the operation on the numbers in the numerator. So 3 plus 4 is 7, we get 7 over 12. Let's look at another example. If we wanted 3 over 8 minus 1 over 8, we have a common denominator of 8. So we bring the denominator along and we perform the operation in the numerator. 3 minus 1 is 2. 2 over 8 can reduce to 1/4. One last example. Let's take 5 over 11 and let's subtract 7 over 11. So again, as long as we have a common denominator, we bring the denominator along and we simply perform the operation in the numerator. 5 minus 7 is negative 2, and so our answer would be negative 2 over 11. Now, I'd like you to pause the screencast and try these two problems. Now, if we don't have a common denominator for our fractions, we need to create a common denominator. And we do this by finding the smallest number that all the denominators will divide evenly into. So let's take a look at our first example. If we wanted to take 1 over 10 and add 3 over 20, we don't have a common denominator. So we're going to look at our two denominators, 10 and 20, and think about what the smallest number that both 10 and 20 will divide evenly into. And that's 20. So I need to take my 1 over 10, and I need to find an equivalent fraction that has 20 as its denominator. So I say 10 times what number will equal 20? And that would be 2. So I have to multiply by 2 in the denominator. So whatever I do in the denominator, I need to do in the numerator. That means I'm going to have to also multiply by 2 in the numerator, and that would give me 2 over 20. So 1 over 10, we know, is equivalent to 2 over 20. We want to add that to 3 over 20. And now our denominators are the same, so the denominator comes along, and we simply do the operation in the numerator. And that's going to give us 5 over 20, which we could reduce to 1/4. Let's try a second example. If we wanted to take 3 over 4 and add 5 over 6, we don't have common denominators. So we're going to look at the 4 and the 6 and think about what the smallest number that both 4 and 6 divide evenly into, and that would be 12. So I'm going to take my 3 over 4 and rewrite it as an equivalent fraction that has 12 as a denominator. So I'd have to multiply the 4 by 3 to get 12. So I'm going to multiply by 3 in the numerator also, and that gives me a fraction of 9 over 12. I'm going to take my 5 over 6 and write it as an equivalent fraction that has 12 as the denominator. And here I would have to multiply by the 6 by 2 to get 12. So I'm going to multiply by 2 in the top. That gives me a 10 over 12, which means I'm going to be taking the 9 over 12 and adding it to the 10 over 12. The denominators are now the same, so bring the denominator along, do the operation in the numerator, and I get as a solution 19 over 12. Now we're going to try one more example, and we'll do it with subtraction this time. So what if we wanted to do 2 over 3 minus 7 over 10? Again, we're going to look at our two denominators, 3 and 10. The smallest number that both 3 and 10 go into is 30. So I'm going to take my 2 over 3 and create an equivalent fraction that has 30 as its denominator, which means I need to multiply by 10 in the denominator. So I will also multiply by 10 in the numerator. And I've created the fraction 20 over 30. I'm going to take my fraction 7 over 10 and write it as an equivalent fraction with 30 as a denominator. And so here I would have to multiply the 10 by 3. So I will multiply by 3 in the top, and that gives me 21 over 30. So that means I'm going to have 20 over 30 minus 21 over 30. And now the denominators are the same, so the denominator comes along, and I do the operation in the numerator. 20 minus 21 is negative 1. over 30, and that would be my solution. So now I'd like you to pause the screencast again and try these problems. If you're struggling, feel free to stop, rewind, replay the screencast as many times as you need until these concepts make more sense. Thanks.